Welcome to Sarajevo, the Bosnian capital for Europe District, our magazine on EU enlargement. 20 years after the start of a bitter war which cost 100,000 people their lives, peace holds, but the country is more divided than ever. The 95 peace deal literally split the country along ethnic lines, with one part of Bosnia which is Serb and Muslims and Croats sharing a federation. But as we'll see in our program, this dysfunctional political system prevents ordinary people from breaking down divisions. Nowhere is it more visible than in segregated schools. Meanwhile, the current stalemate continues to block progress towards EU membership. But we'll also show you the unexpected side of Bosnia. The country has become a new mecca for ski lovers, and we'll meet the woman who's been called Bosnia's Billie Holiday. But in our first story, our reporters traveled to Republika Srpska, the Serb entity within the country. For more than a decade, political life there has been dominated by one party and unrelenting separatist rhetoric. But now it's economic issues that have come to the fore. Growing hardship and reported widespread corruption have prompted the first significant protests in years.
Hard at work in Republika Srpska's biggest bakery, Sasha Trivic opened his first outlet at the end of the war in 1995 with €6,000 and no experience. He now employs 240 people and sells throughout Bosnia and exports to Slovenia. He says the government is doing its best in tough times.
The government is trying to make better situations for production, but you know that administration is very slow.
But many people here aren't so forgiving. In this entity where 90% of the population are Serb, the economy has replaced separatism as a key concern. In the heart of Banja Luka, pensioners and those who've lost their jobs try to scrape a living on the black market. Even in the relatively well-off capital, people here simply aren't buying the government's line that the current economic woes are a knock-on effect of the Eurozone crisis.
People have no money, no jobs. Even people who do work don't get paid. The others have lost their jobs. How can we say that's okay? There's nothing here.
I think that, as others have said, the situation is now even worse than during the war.
Our government doesn't think of the people, they only look after their own interests. They privatized the only factories that exported products and worked well.
Unemployment is at 38% and the average wage is €413, less than the national average. The dissatisfaction was felt at recent local polls. The long-time ruling party SNSD lost 23 of its 41 mayors. The big winners, the ultranationalist SDS party, who set aside traditional separatist rhetoric to focus instead on attacking the government's economic record.
We have seen a drop in production, a decrease in investment, and a huge public administration, along with badly defined economic goals. That's what has led to this economic crisis.
The leader of the Bosnian Serb entity, President Milorad Dodik, denies the entity is in trouble, even predicting growth next year of 1%.
The economic situation here is much more stable than in any other country in the region. We are not facing bankruptcy. We are absolutely solvent. We are paying off all our debts abroad.
The Republika manages its own finances and direct taxation. It even has its own stock exchange. One of the companies trading, the former state telephone company, now owned by Serbia. A symbol of one of the most profitable but unpopular moves of Dodik's rule, a wave of such privatizations, in particular in the now ailing industrial sector. Critics say that deep-rooted corruption and reckless investments means the public haven't reaped the benefits of those deals.
But after 6.5 years of spending, and not doing anything, and stealing, it's a high time to introduce fiscal and financial discipline.
In November, 40,000 state employees protested plans to cut police and teachers' salaries by 10%. Next year's austerity budget plans €60 million of cuts. The wave of unrest in Republika Srpska looks likely to grow.
And for more on the story, I'm now joined by Nebojša Radmanović, who currently chairs the rotating presidency of Bosnia-Herzegovina. Mr. Radmanović represents Bosnia's Serbs. Mr. Radmanović, thank you very much for being with us here on France 24. Let's start with the latest EU report on Bosnia's progress. It was extremely critical. As a rule, Bosnia is now the worst performing country in the Balkans when it comes to EU membership. Who is responsible for this deadlock?
First of all, we are responsible. We are Bosnia's elected politicians. So we are to blame because we couldn't agree on some vital issues. However, the European Union also shares some of the blame, as it stopped Bosnia and Herzegovina on our path to membership 4 years ago at a key moment. As far as I'm concerned, the European Union could make more of an effort to help Bosnia and Herzegovina catch up with our neighbours.
I'd like to be more specific on the role and responsibilities of Bosnia's Serbs, because after all, you represent the Serbs here in Sarajevo. The EU High Representative has accused Bosnian Serbs of undermining the Dayton Peace Agreement. And I'd like to quote the President of the Republika Srpska, Mr. Milorad Dodik. He said, "Bosnia and Herzegovina is a rotten state that does not deserve to exist."
It's not unusual that the president of the Serb entity within Bosnia has his own opinions on that country. The statements coming from the Republika Srpska are mainly defensive. It is their goal to defend the independence of the Republika Srpska within Bosnia. The EU High Representative in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Valentin Inzko, always talks about Serb leaders, but never mentions those from the Federation. Impartial observers could note that the rhetoric from Federation politicians is undermining the Dayton agreements, but Inzko never mentions them. So I think that the statements coming from his cabinet, which are then picked up by certain media, I think those statements are incorrect.
Is it to say that Bosnia's Serbs see their future within the Bosnian state?
Well, I don't know if I'd phrase it that way. There are Serbs who say they are happy to live within Bosnia as long as their autonomy and rights are respected. However, there are also some people in Bosnia, for example, Bosniaks and Croats. They say Serbs have no future in Bosnia. There have been attempts to centralize power in Sarajevo in the past. This clearly undermines the peace agreement.
A recent UN report shows that corruption remains a huge problem in your country. 1 in 6 respondents said that they have been exposed to corruption when dealing with Bosnia's administration. Why hasn't a single politician been convicted?
They're simply not true. Such statements by some people in the international community about high-ranking politicians who were never prosecuted, they're not true. A number of officials were indicted, but there was not enough evidence to convict them. And that is why these trials go nowhere.
Nebojša Radmanović, thank you very much for talking to us. Bosnia's healthcare system suffered crippling damage during the war as huge numbers of nurses and doctors were killed or left the country. Efforts to rebuild the shattered system focused on reintroducing family doctors who are more present in the communities. But as we'll see, patients complain corruption remains endemic.
Nemila Clinic, 2 hours from the capital, hasn't escaped the economic crisis in Bosnia. Due to lack of funds, there's only 2 doctors working here full-time. The waiting room is always full, appointments rung back to back. Dr. Machevich is as frustrated as his patients.
People aren't well cared for here. Nobody's happy, patient or doctor. There's budget cuts all round, so you can't do your job properly. We try to do our best in these conditions.
And we have to pay for it all.
As well as funding cuts, universal access is also a problem. One solution that's being pushed nationwide, increasing the numbers of mobile community doctors.
This road is still okay, but I'm not sure about the other one.
For the past 4 years, Dr. Machevich has divided his time between hospital and home visits. Today, 58% of the population is registered with community doctors. This man has cancer. The local hospital refused to take him last night.
We would have to go back to the hospital if the doctor hadn't come. Yesterday I tried to admit him, but they refused. I explained that he's refusing food, that he has no energy left. Thank God the doctor came today.
From Friday, we'll come every day.
The visit's over and the couple have not had to pay anything. Do people never pay you?
No. They never pay, it's free. Officially, treatment is provided by the state. Sometimes some people try to give us money, but it's not allowed and it isn't obligatory. It's called corruption, and I don't want to be accused of corruption.
Dr. Machevich earns €700 a month, a salary less scrupulous medical staff supplement by taking gifts or money from their patients. Back in Sarajevo, a young mother recounts her tale. She doesn't want her identity revealed for fear of repercussions.
My son was meant to have an operation in a state hospital. Everything was arranged. It was meant to be free, but apparently that wasn't how the surgeon saw it. He refused to operate at the last minute. They took my son out of the operating theatre, even though he was already under anaesthetic. Afterwards, we were told we should have given the doctor €350.
Still 15 kilometers to go.
Treacherous road conditions and out-of-the-way villages, all in a day's work for these doctors. Teams like these now serve 135 communities. Patients are only hospitalised if really necessary, a saving for the state. This woman has broken her hip.
No, I'm not going to the hospital. As you can see, I can't walk. Before, the doctors didn't come to us. Before, my son had to bring me to Sarajevo when I needed to see a doctor.
And she admits she wouldn't have gone to Sarajevo today. She'd simply have gone without treatment.
Would be good if we had a permanent team on the ground, but given the weather and the distances to be covered, it's complicated. Now we have to go. I think there are still lots of people waiting to be seen.
The next challenge for Bosnia's health system, enticing young people to work in a sector where the pay is low, workloads are high, and the road to recovery still looks dauntingly long.
Well, Bosnia is known for its rugged mountains, and some of the highest peaks are within half an hour's drive of the capital. 30 years after Sarajevo proudly hosted the Winter Olympics, Bosnia's ski resorts are seeking to attract foreign tourists. Our reporter Julie Dungolov took to the slopes.
The first descent for a few intrepid skiers, those who weren't scared to brave the cold and flex their muscles. The season in Yahorina doesn't open officially for another few days. The ski lifts aren't even working.
Oh, that was great. That was great.
At minus 17 degrees Celsius, everyone has their fail-safe method for keeping the cold at bay.
We're warming up.
Here comes Tarzan.
This is usual, you know, like first you get warming up with some grappa and then you go skiing.
Some don't even need alcohol. His friends call him Tarzan, but forget the jungle. He's been king of the slopes here for decades.
Of course I'm not cold. That's how I warm up. I don't get cold after that. It's my first this season.
Inside the mountainside restaurant, many of the customers have come from Sarajevo, just half an hour away by car. Among the 200,000 tourists who come here each year, 80% are from the Balkans, others from Hungary and Turkey. For the moment, few Western Europeans make the trip.
Most foreigners don't even know we have resorts here. Everything that happened in the past here is still very fresh in people's minds.
And yet in this resort, the divisions that still exist in Bosnia seem a world away.
We don't feel the effects of the war here. We don't distinguish between people. Personally, I don't see any problem. Here, people respect each other and nobody asks where you come from. That's all in the past.
Further down on the slopes, the preparations continue. Igor has spent the last weeks waxing hundreds of pairs of skis. Are you expecting much business?
Yes, there will be many people. There always are.
To welcome the crowds, the resort is getting a facelift. Out with the old ski lifts dating from the 1984 Olympics, in with new machinery to serve a new generation of skiers.
We started modernizing 4 years ago. It's all the latest technology of world-class quality and also artificial snow. We can match the standard of European resorts.
These slopes will soon be full of thousands of skiers. Until then, there's still plenty of preparation ahead before the season starts in earnest.
That's already the end of the first part of Europe District. We'll return after the news break in about 10 minutes.